You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now present the Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi.
Welcome to the Health Hub on Radio Maria Canada, exploring cutting-edge health and wellness information and therapies, helping you to take your health to the next level. I'm your host, Kathy Biasi, and I'm a holistic nutritionist and a professional cancer coach. On today's episode, my guest is Karen Goslin, author of Yellow Paint, Learning to Live Again, a powerful memoir about navigating loss, grief, and the often messy, beautiful process of rediscovering life after it's been shattered. In her book, Karen takes us on a journey painted with vulnerability and strength, showing that healing isn't about returning to who we once were. It's about finding color, meaning, and purpose in who we are becoming. In our conversation together, we will explore the inspiration behind Yellow Paint, the lessons Karen learned about resilience and self-compassion, and what it truly means to live again after hardship. It's an episode about courage, creativity, and the art of starting over. Karen has a Master of Social Work from the University of Toronto, and in 1998 she founded KG and Associates and has trademarked her method, the KG Accountable Therapy. Karen is passionate about guiding people toward clear transformation. She helps her clients learn to see pain, addiction, chronic illness, loss, and trauma as an invitation towards change, to ultimately own the glorious life they were searching for, but believed unattainable. Her work creates brave and honest spaces that enable the straight talk necessary for accountability and healing. And now Goslin is sharing her experience and insights with a broader audience in her debut book, Yellow Paint, Learning to Live Again. I do hope you stay tuned with us. This is an inspiring episode. We will be right back in a few minutes after to speak to Karen Goslin.
You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now continue with the program, The Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi.
Welcome back to the Health Hub, everybody. Please do follow us on our social sites. We are on Instagram, X, and Facebook, and we are at the Health Hub RMC on those locations. Karen, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Kathy. I'm thrilled to be here.
We're so happy to have you, fellow Torontonian. It's nice to have local on our show. It really is. And we're going to jump right into it because we really, really want to showpiece this wonderful book that you have written. What made you write the book?
So the short answer is that, I told my daughter, who was 27 at the time, the real story of my life. And she was a little shocked, and then she was amazed. And then she just, honestly, she looked right at me and she said, "Mom, I think you need to write a book." Because, she'd always known me to be kind of the strong, ambitious, successful, woman and mother. And then I told her the backstory. So the short answer is that was the, immediate impetus to write the book. But more than anything, I had it in the back of my mind already that what I had done in my own life after hitting rock bottom and rebuilding my life and the work that I was already doing with clients, I just knew that it was a story worth sharing that needed to be told, and a broader audience would benefit from hearing the messages in the book.
This story is completely from your perspective in your life?
It is. It's half memoir, half self-help. So It kind of follows the story of my life, of how I kept getting in my own way and eventually hitting rock bottom and then doing my work to figure myself out, not just to kind of survive those moments and the days and months that followed hitting rock bottom, but actually what I did to rebuild a dream life that, I'm living now that I never would have expected. And it also introduces the world to the KG accountable therapy method. So during the process of writing the book, we actually trademarked that label and that context of the work that I was doing. So it also introduces the reader to specific strategies and tools that they can use, and the metaphor being, to find their own yellow paint moments.
May I ask, in your phrasing, what rock bottom means?
I think that a lot of us will hit that, place because of our imperfect histories, whether that's childhood or teenage years or young adult years in the 20s. We will experience some imperfections in terms of how we accomplish things or how we get in our own way or how other people hurt us. We'll go through traumas, losses, betrayals, rejections, and those will change our core beliefs of what we come to believe about ourselves, others, life, and love. And we don't know it necessarily at the time, but as we absorb those core beliefs and then we then generalize and project those onto future situations. And what we've internalized is inaccurate and negative. So when we put those negative projections onto future experiences, it will sabotage us in some way. And this is all kind of most of the time happening in the background. And as we keep getting in our own way, there are invitations to grow. But if we don't grow, we will miss that opportunity. And then what's coming next is something probably more serious and more painful. So the book follows my 7 major experiences that I had in my life where I got in my own way until I reached a point where I honestly, Kathy, didn't think I could go on. It was unbearable. I had pushed a lot of people away. I'd lost friendships, had interruptions in my career, lost my marriage, and then ultimately lost my health. I was bedridden for 2 years.
Oh,
And actually the order was that I was bedridden and then my husband walked out. And it was the day that he came to pick our daughter up for his first kind of annual camping trip without me. And I reached a point where I didn't think I could go on. And I think that isn't just unique to me. I think as we keep getting in our own way, like I said, those painful experiences just keep getting worse and more painful. And whatever our, everybody's version of rock bottom may look differently, but it's usually unbearable, incredibly painful. We're at our wits' end and we are lost and confused about what to do. And that's what happened to me.
getting in our own way. Now, is this sort of a term that you are using all the time in therapy? Because, like, for in experiences that I've had, other people I've seen, like, these situations can hit people like a Mack truck, and it's not even a thought process that makes them spiral, right? It's just a situation has arisen, it's impacted you profoundly, and your life has taken a turn. Now, is that would you consider that getting in your way, and therefore your therapy would be applicable to all of these situations?
It is, because when we get in our own way, it means that we are missing the opportunity to grow from an otherwise painful event, right?
Mm-hmm.
And whether we over control or under control, overreact, underreact, fight or flight, many different versions of how we get in our own way. But it is a term I use with clients, and I use it lovingly and with a lot of compassion. There's no judgment. We're all trying to figure ourselves out. But as long as we're projecting those negative core beliefs from our past onto a current situation, we will misinterpret either our goodness or other people's intentions or what what life has in store for us, or even what love is about. So the sabotaging is real because the meaning we're attaching to a current painful event is usually inaccurate. So the sabotage and the getting in our own way is really about missing the opportunity. And we do it. Like in the book, I went through 7, right? Like I said. So it took, it takes a while for us to wake up and figure out kind of what the universe is trying to tell us that we need to correct or grow from or understand about our past that we're unfairly laying on the present. And so when we get out of our own way, it's that aha moment, right? Oprah called it the aha moment of like, okay. So for me, it was part of my journey was about carrying a wound around unworthiness. I don't know if this is a good time for an example or not.
Absolutely.
I carried that unworthiness wound. I had 2 older brothers. They were 5 and 7 years older than me. And it was the 70s. We were in Burlington, Ontario, and boys will be boys, girls will be girls. And, so they were 2 years apart from each other. But all I knew growing up is that they wanted nothing to do with me. I didn't know that it was the 70s. I didn't know about gender stereotype activities. All I knew is that I wanted to be included with whatever play they were involved with friends in the neighborhood, but I was excluded. So this is where that inaccurate belief came from, because that I took from that, that I wasn't good enough to be included. I didn't belong. And I carried that with me right up to that 7th invitation. Some of us ride more of the aggressive side of the wound, and some ride more of the passive side. And a lot of this is determined by gender or birth order or even personality at birth. For me, I rode the aggressive side. So carrying unworthiness and riding that aggressive side, I fought. I worked too hard. I did too much. I argued too much. I judged too much, all in an effort to find a sense of worthiness. But yes, as you were saying earlier, I kept getting in my own way, because trying to restore a sense of worthiness by fighting, of course, that didn't work for me. It doesn't work for any of us. And the opposite is true for people it's true for the opposite side of that wound on the passive side, because people who don't say enough, who shut down, who pull away will also get in their own way. So that was how I kind of kept trying to figure myself out, and kept getting in my own way.
Would you classify the type of therapy that you do as a reframing, or is it something different, deeper than that?
I divide my programs into the head and the heart. And the head is really about those evidence-based approaches like CBT, self-care management. There's addiction programs, but it's kind of like, what am I going to do in the heat of the moment to recognize to how to get out of my way so that I'm more assertive rather than fighting or flighting. The hard parts of the program are what you're talking about in terms of not just exploring our past and making those connections, because I see it in my client population. I've been doing this for over 30 years. So we live in an era where people understand how they're getting in their own way and maybe even understand where it's coming from. But beyond exploring the past and making those connections is what to do about it. And that's where I honestly see a lot of people getting stuck. It's like, I know where this comes from, so I know what I'm doing, but I don't know what to do about it. So beyond exploring is the reframing, is the correcting of those beliefs from the past. So for me, it was depersonalizing that my brother's not wanting to play with me actually had nothing to do with how good a person I was. But then it's about, how do I shift that? Because, okay, now that I know that, the next time I'm in a situation where maybe people aren't asking my opinion in a conversation, maybe somebody makes reservations and there's just not room for one more, all these bump ups against our core wound. So it's really about having something specific to do differently when you wake up tomorrow morning. So the accountability is like, now that I understand, now that I've made connections, now that I've explored and reframed, what's the actual gift from my healthy self that has been waiting to kind of have more airtime in my life the whole time? What is she going to say or do in this situation that actually is piggybacking on that new set of awareness? Because otherwise we will just revert back to what we've been doing all our life. And so change is hard. So it takes in my opinion, a very specific idea, gift, reframe, yes, and ideas about what I'm going to be doing because of that new insight.
Okay, that's a very good explanation. Now, back to the book, Yellow Paint. I mean, it's kind of an evocative title. Does that have a particular meaning for you? Why did you name the book Yellow Paint?
It does. That's the question I get asked the most. And I always knew the book was going to be called Yellow Paint. It had a literal meaning for me in the book, but it invites the readers to find their own yellow paint moments. So for me, the literal meaning was once I hit rock bottom, my ex-husband's leaving down this driveway on a hot June afternoon. He looks lighter and happier, without me. My daughter looks happy to see him. And I just couldn't bear the pain of losing everything. And when I kind of cataloged my whole life, it's like, wow, I at that moment, honestly, I felt like I had nothing. And when we talk about the heavy, wet blanket of depression, that was me. It was like there's no way out of this. My pain, I went through kind of where I was in my life and what was coming up in the next coming days. And in a kind of a bizarre moment of consciousness, I remembered that my father was coming the next morning. I was to keep the house that I was in post-divorce. I was renting out my basement. And my previous tenant moved out a couple days early, and the new tenant wasn't moving in for the next couple of days. So it was like unusually vacant. And my dad had this idea, like we should just get a fresh coat of paint in that room. And he picked yellow. And I don't even like yellow. I don't wear yellow. Somebody asked me this at an event on Friday, and I'm like, yeah, like for my first speaking event, I went online and purchased this beautiful yellow dress, and then when I got it and put it on, it just looked horrific on me. But and he's like, yeah, and it was a nice soft lemon yellow, but honestly, I was just running on adrenaline in those days. So I'm like, sure, Dad, I don't care, no problem. If you think it needs a fresh coat of paint, go for it. But the fact that my parents were coming in the morning to paint that room yellow made me stop. It was like that like that detour in the road that went just like, sorry, I'm just going to have to help my dog here for a second. She's having a bit of a morning. So so it stopped me in my tracks, and it was like, okay, what does this mean? And in the moment, I knew that I couldn't do anything dramatic and then leave it for them to discover in the morning. And I know that sounds dramatic even as I say it, but that's the truth. And it was just that pause that that invited me to take a look at what was really going on and what did I really want in my life. And then it was about what I did in the weeks, months, and years to follow, to actually change the entire direction of my life from a new discovery that I was worth it the whole time. And I know that sounds a bit cheesy, but that's really how it happened. And that's the journey that I take the readers on and take my clients on every day. And that's how it happened.
Was writing this book cathartic? Was it painful? Was it a process that surprised you as you were putting your memories, your thoughts, your feelings, I guess, onto paper, and then knowing the ultimate was that this was going out to the masses?
Well, it's a good question, Kathy. So it was very therapeutic for me to write the book. And I think I said at the end, you know, everybody, whether you publish it or not, the cathartic therapeutic effect of just taking some time to write out your story, and it invites you to recall the good and the bad and your strengths and making all those connections. So it was extremely therapeutic for me. The surprise came in chapter 8. It's called The Autoimmune Gift. And as I said a few minutes ago, I was bedridden for a couple of years. I developed autoimmune illnesses of a variety of kinds because, after fighting and working so hard for so long, my body finally said, okay, like if you're not going to stop yourself, we're stopping you. So So that's what happened. And so for years I was immersed in my health, my wellness, a very, very slow, methodical journey towards better health. And then I remember, many years later, I remember thinking my whole house, my whole identity was being consumed by being sick. And I remember the day I collected my books. I said, okay, okay, some of these books I'm going to give away, and other books I want to keep. I'm just going to put them away because otherwise they were everywhere. And I put everything away, but I saved everything, including all of my medical reports. So I started chapter 8 like any other chapter. I'm framing it out. I, put all the information out there, and I was in my kitchen, and I, dug up these old medical reports, spread them across my kitchen island, and started going through them and started charting them, like the numbers at the time I was diagnosed, the numbers I had when I was getting better, and then where I felt like I could, restore a good sense of health. And it honestly, I remember it like it was yesterday. I just stood there and I just started sobbing because especially what surprised me were the numbers at the beginning of my recovery. And it was like I had metals, my cortisol was depleted, my I was in adrenal fatigue. My DHEA was equivalent to like a 90-year-old woman, and I was only like in my mid 30s. And it just shocked me that, and validated, like probably like a validation shock all in one of like, I really, really was that sick. And if I ever show people the before and after pictures of what I looked like at the time of diagnosis, it is shocking. But so I almost had to take, a couple of days and just breathe through it. And it probably helped me re-grieve that period. I literally lost a decade of my life by the time I got back on my feet. So it really, it was really shocking to me, and it was important to stop and re-grieve what had happened to me, and then it was this validation and this like incredibly powerful strength, like holy cow, I really did dig myself out. And that was, then it was like so strengthening and powerful to me to remember where I had come from and where I am now.
Obviously, writing a book, I don't know if this is the right terminology, makes you vulnerable, but must also have a feeling of vulnerability to you as you were writing, that you're being very vulnerable.
I was.
And with vulnerability, there's also a tie in there with resilience. And resilience doesn't necessarily mean, being strong at the point of impact. It means being strong throughout a process. Do you find that within your vulnerability in writing your book, you gained resilience as you move forward?
I do, because it reminded me that when I hit obstacles, there's ways around it. It's like the picture I have in my waiting room of that tree, and the poster is called Resilience, and the tree is kind of trying desperately to grow on the side of that cliff, and the roots, keep going around all the rocks to make sure it finds water. And it is a story about resilience, and the process of writing the book added to my resilience because it clearly reminded me of where I came from and what I had inaccurately internalized, and the new core beliefs that I had discovered in my journey, and how every day I will bump up against one of those rocks. I will bump up against unworthiness or loss of control, and that there is a way, not necessarily around it like the rock, but through it in a way that honors who I really am. And the book is very bold, and honest. Sometimes people will say, like, oh my gosh, you're a therapist and you shared all that intimate details about yourself. But I'm like, yes, because that's what it's all about. The self-compassion and the compassion for others of our imperfections is what makes us human, and it's the true story. So I emulate what I invite clients to do every day in my office, because the guts it takes to reveal yourself and the intimacy of that is part of how you build that resilience, because then I'm good enough even though I'm imperfect. So like where I am in my journey, Kathy, honestly, it was empowering for me to be so honest, not to indulge myself, but to validate myself and encourage readers to be honest with themselves in a self-compassionate way that says, yeah, if Karen couldn't figure it out, oh my God, she went through all that stuff. It's like, yeah, I guess I'm in good company.
And I think honestly, just through my practice, watching other practitioners, when you can come from a place of familiarity with people you're talking to, when they understand that not only do you have book knowledge that supports what you're putting across, but also the personal experience to back up those points of view, I think that just takes therapy, clinical work to a level that is unmatched. So congratulations on doing that and helping your clients. We're going to take a quick moment here, take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes.
You are listening to The Health Hub here on Radio Maria Canada, a Catholic voice wherever you are. To contact us and be a part of the show, email thh@radiomaria.ca. We now continue with the program. Here once again is your host, Kathy Biasi.
Welcome back to the Health Hub. We're going to continue with our conversation with Karen Goslin, and we're going to talk more in depth about her book. There's some very interesting pieces. We've covered a lot of them already, but the music component that is within your book is very unique. Can you give us an idea of how music ties in with the book?
Oh, great. Thanks, Kathy. Yes. So the music turned out to be a pretty important part. I'm a big music lover. And when I put kind of pen to paper to write the first chapter, which was about hitting rock bottom, and it introduces the reader right at that point, it's like, and I'd never written this book, right? This was my debut book. So I'm like, where do I even start? And somehow the idea just came to me about using music and songs. And so it turned out to be, I think, a really fantastic idea because each chapter now drops the reader into the chapter through the lyrics of a song. And this is not easy to do, but living my, best life, my yellow paint life, I worked really hard to get the copyright licenses and we were able to get 9 of them. So it drops the reader into the immediate tone of the chapter. And then we have, we even have a Spotify Yellow Paint playlist. And of course, our audiobook that we just released a couple of weeks ago has the instrumental. And honestly, it brought it all together. And I just think music is a great artistic place to say so much about life that sometimes we can't really put into words. But when you put the lyrics with the music, like the magic happens. So let me give you an example. Your listeners might be interested. So chapter 1 is called Yellow Paint Hitting Rock Bottom, a little bit about what we were just talking about in the previous segment. So I'm walking around going, okay, paint. Let me think of a song about paint and yellow and all that stuff. But I came across the Rolling Stones lyrics, Paint It Black. So the chapter gets introduced this way. Chapter 1, Yellow Paint Hitting Rock Bottom. I look inside myself and see my heart is black. I see my red door. I must have it painted black. Maybe then I'll fade away and not have to face the facts. It's not easy facing up when your whole world is black. Rolling Stones, Paint It Black, 1966. That's just one example. And I think it's very powerful to introduce the concepts and my journey through the music. It immediately gives a message to the listener or the reader about what this next piece is going to be about. And everybody has their own interpretations of music and lyrics and what it means to them.
But it's a connection with you, right?
Yeah.
It's another form of connection with you, the music that has influenced you and impacts you.
That's right. That's right. And there's some surprising lyrics, like the next chapter is about my Ukrainian heritage. And I ended up using an Eminem Lose Yourself song because when you listen to those lyrics, and I was actually mentioning this to somebody recently and they guessed it before I got to the end of my sentence, like, I bet you did lose yourself because it was all about seizing opportunities. And I even said in that chapter, like, I know, you might think this is a weird choice for like my Baba and Gigi from like the 1930s, but it just the lyrics speak to you. And halfway through the book, I was like, I got, I stumbled on one of the chapters and I'm like, I don't know what the song is here. So I went back to my editor and I said, like, maybe we're pushing this too hard. Like, maybe this whole idea of using lyrics, like, we're just forcing it. And she goes, no, you're not. Go back and you figure out a song for that chapter because she said, this is really hardly ever done. And it has a unique flavor to it. And she was right. So I did find a song for that one chapter I was kind of scratching my head on. But it was where the audiobook was launched, and we worked with a production team down in Minnesota. And when I heard they're putting the instrumentals to the introductions of each chapter, yeah, it's a beautiful thing, and I knew it was meant to be.
Wonderful. Back to the book, back to your, you're explaining through your book, your life. Were there turning points where, or you may have a specific point you can lead us to, where you felt that within your own life, this could be within the book, this could be just something that you can talk to us about, either or both. Were there points where you felt yourself moving from surviving on a daily basis to actually living life?
Well, it probably, when I was recovering from my chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia, it was very, very hard going. And I was in bed. My parents moved in to help take care of me and my daughter. And I literally started my methodical, recovery with a pedometer, walking around the house, counting steps before I could crash. I crashed and then I'd have to go back to beginning. And I talk a bit about this in the book that as much as the fighter within me worked against me, there was some stubbornness about, how I'd met my match with my body that was breaking down. And I made friends with my body and said, okay, like I call it with clients, surrender without defeat. I surrender, body, you're trying to tell me something. I'm going to put down the boxing gloves. I'm going to listen to what you're telling me. So it literally was that powerful moment where I knew my body would have the last word. If I did too much, it was going to tell me. It's tricky with autoimmunity because sometimes you don't find out you've done too much until it's too late. But over many months and years, I put down the boxing gloves and would listen intently. I say in the book, I almost got to a point where I could feel my immune system vibrating in my body saying, Karen, you're on that verge, back it up, don't do so much. But it started with a pedometer around the house, and then it started with me with daily walks down to the end of my driveway and back. And then I could go a minute out and a minute back. And then it started with one sit up a day, and then two a day. And then you'd crash and you'd go back. But I remember at some point gaining momentum and taking care of my mental and emotional and social and physical stress started working. And it got to the point, over many years that I then was able to do 3 5K runs a week. And that's pretty remarkable from if you saw me in the early days. So that's why I call that chapter the autoimmune gift, because part of it is like, okay, the physical pieces of it, but most of it was like that mental, powerful moment of knowing the power of listening to your body so closely every day, almost every hour. My old physician had me log my energy and stress and pain every hour of every day. Now my autoimmune clients have all these apps to use, but at that time, that was paper. And she's like, if you don't hand in your logs, I can't help you. So she was all I had at that time. So I'm like, okay, I better do this. So that intent, close, watching of all the symptoms in your body to know what you were going to do in the next hour. And it worked.
You cultivated self-compassion is what you did in these moments.
And mindfulness of knowing in that moment what was your body and your mind trying to tell you. And for me, it was like, okay, it wasn't that my body won. It was about me winning because I was listening, finally listening to what my body was trying to tell me. So that's a huge dramatic change from somebody who could, maybe get to the washroom and back. And then I remember we have a park behind us, and I was like, got to the point where I could do those runs.
And it's also, going earlier into your lifetime where you said you were a fighter. A lot of us are fighters. We rather go, and it's also presented to us. The harder you go, the faster you go, the more you do, the better you'll be. And it's just like a mantra, right?
Yeah.
And boy, am I seeing within myself and with clients and people that I talk to that mantra doesn't run true. Sometimes stepping back and being self-compassionate is the best medicine that you can give to yourself. And you're an example of that for sure. So
Uh,
let's I don't want to get to the end of the show without giving you some space here to talk about if you saw, maybe you could give us some tips if you're working with somebody or someone feels that they're stuck or has some they reign true with you with things that you're saying. What would be the first steps in getting unstuck and moving towards a happier place?
Well, generally, the framework I offer starts with daily self-care. So, eating, sleeping, exercise, and leisure. What can you mechanically start to do that's better than what you're currently doing that's within your reach? Because that honors the relationship between mental and physical health. And the second step really is about being keenly aware of the thought distortions, or what I call the stinky thoughts, that are tricking you into reacting in ways that gives you that false sense of control, which is why a lot of fighters, will be so enticed to fight because in that moment, yeah, oh yeah, I feel in control. But then of course it backfires. There's lots of pieces in the framework within mindfulness and that self-affirmation and compassion that you were talking about. And then it's about that piece of really getting honest with yourself about where you were originally hurt, or what were the big experiences in your life that hurt you, and how did that change what you believed about yourself, and what is inaccurate about that belief. So, and those are kind of the steps that I generally start to walk clients through. So that, for me, it was about knowing what I was going to do differently tomorrow morning and looking for that healthy self to tell me that you are worthy. And so how am I going to respond from a worthy place? And that's the important piece of that, being very specific.
Karen, do you think healing is ever complete, or is it more like a continual layering, like coats of paint?
It is layered paint because with every you know, first of all, our lives aren't perfect. So every
Hmm.
time, somebody, whatever, criticizes us, leaves us out, we get sick with something, somebody betrays us, somebody lies to us, or, a very unfortunate traumatic event. So life continues to be imperfect. So just because we've kind of got a handle on ourselves doesn't make the rest of our life perfect. And every time there is something thematically similar to our original painful moment, our wounded self, will come out of the woods and go, okay, we got this for you. And then we run the risk of sabotaging ourselves again. And the second reason we keep growing is because through the developmental stages of life, whether our children leave home, or one of our parents dies, or we retire, even as we get on and we're aging throughout our life, we will come through those developmental stages. And I believe that at each of those major life transitions, it's kind of like it throws the balls in the air again. And it's
Hmm.
like, it kind of brings us face to face again with our wounded self about how we're going to manage the change. Because generally, as humans, we don't like change. And so something will come up specific for us in that life transition that challenges our wounded self and invites the healthy self again to teach us something, to help us through that stage to keep growing.
And finally, my final question to you before we open things up to, new things that you're working on and towards. If you look back, you've written the book, you've come through all of these things. What would you tell a younger version of yourself, someone who's just starting on this journey maybe to heal, or someone who is in the midst of not knowing where to go with healing? But if you look back and you could be your own best friend, what would you say to yourself?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't think anybody's ever asked that in all the interviews I've been doing. Um, it would be, this has nothing to do with you. So whether it's my brothers, my ex-husband, it's like, this has nothing to do with you. You're internalizing something. You're making it about you. You're personalizing something, whether it's circumstantial or somebody else's, imperfections. It's not about you. And so get out of your own way and live your best self because you were worthy the whole time. I say in the book, it's like your best life is waiting for you the whole time. Your healthy self, even if she's in the shadows, she's there to tell you that. So if, gosh, I can only imagine where I would be, right? If growing up and every time my brothers excluded me, it was like, oh no, this has nothing to do with it. I would just get on with my day and have a good time and believe in myself. The wounded self will trick us. I call it the dirty deals of the wounded self, will trick you into believing things that aren't true. So yeah, that's what I would tell myself. It's not about you, Karen.
Mm-hmm. And therefore, the book is applicable not only to people that are suffering and looking for help and a way out, but if we as parents can move this message on to their younger children. Imagine if someone had the knowledge that you have to talk to your younger self and to work you through some of these situations, how much better off you would be. And I think this is the place of mental health that is very exciting, is that parents have a lot of knowledge to help them navigate with their younger children when issues and when mental health crises arise. So congratulations on that. And this book is for everybody. And now let us know when it was published. It's been published, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
and I just want to just mention something about what you were just saying, because each chapter in the book, like I'm not meant for everybody necessarily to read it from like page 1 to 230.
Okay, that's good to know.
It's a different segment of life. So, if you're interested in autoimmunity, there's a chapter about that. If you're interested in conscious parenting, what you were just talking about, there's a chapter about parenting. So readers, I invite readers and listeners to pick and choose what chapters they're most interested in, because each chapter can stand on its own, and will give you little golden nuggets. But I totally agree. Breaking intergenerational patterns through conscious parenting is a key part in the book. And it is one of those transitions that we were just talking about, that when we become a parent or our children leave home, it's like, how am I managing the messages I'm giving my children? Because that's a very important reflection back to our own childhoods. We relive through our parenting of our children. And so breaking some of those intergenerational patterns, can be so powerful.
And yes, and we don't ever stop impacting our children. It's not just from baby to teenage years, then they leave the house and we're done. We are continually influencing how our children react to the world by the way we react to each stage of life that we are going through ahead of them. So it's very important, the message that we send out.
That's right.
And younger parents will realize that you don't stop parenting. You never ever stop parenting. So
And
it's
I
wonderful.
love, like, millennials are coming in now to do pre-parenting counseling. I love
It's
it.
great. It's a wonderful thing. I think that's so exciting when it comes to mental health. Do you have any other projects that you've got going, or anything on the works?
Yes, thank you. So we published the book in February. The audiobook was published a couple of weeks ago. And we are going to be launching our yellow paint e-therapy programs in the new year. So we're thrilled to have all of that, continue the yellow paint movement. We just released the audiobook at the Emmys a couple of weeks ago. So, it just keeps building, and there's lots of other ideas in the works that I'm exploring at this point, but really have my eye on the yellow paint therapy programs and really exposing the world to the audiobook.
Wonderful. And I'm going to assume that the Yellow Paint book can be purchased on Amazon, or is it in all the other big name
Yeah,
stores?
KarenGoslinSpeaks.com is the book website. So all the information about the book is on that site, and where to purchase it in the different formats, whether it's a paperback, hardcover, Kindle, or audiobook. So it's on all the platforms, Audible, Apple Books, Amazon. And so it's all the information is there at KarenGoslinSpeaks.com.
And that, of course, will be included in the show notes. So you'll have, pinpoint accessibility to it. Karen, thank you so much for being on the show and, sharing your journey and the journey of creating this wonderful book.
Great. Thanks again so much, Kathy, for having me.
Everybody, we will talk to you next week on The Health Hub.
You have been listening to The Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi, here on Radio Maria Canada.